Good evening. Welcome to Gridiron Gurus for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarczyk alongside Drew Bonifant. Drew, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. Our guest is Lawrence High School football coach John Hersom. Coach, thanks for coming in.
Yes, thank you.
Week 2 of the season's coming up, but let's hit on a couple issues that have kind of cropped up after week 1. First, 8-man, it looks like it was a success last week with a lot of teams that played it, seemed to enjoy it, fans enjoyed it. Just in the last hour or so, Dirigo High School out in Dixfield announced that they have to suspend their varsity program due to low numbers for the remainder of this year, and they're going to petition the Maine Principals Association to play 8-man beginning next year. First thing that I think of when this comes up, Drew, is the schedule in the Campbell Conference Class D is, suddenly teams have a bye.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this, I think it was 3 years ago, when Booth Bay dropped out of Class D South and just forced the other teams to get that extra bye, 7-game regular season instead of the 8-game regular season. So, I mean, we'll see what the effect of the competitive makeup of that is, but it's definitely something that throws the schedules for a loop, having a team taken out of the mix.
Yeah, Spruce Mountain was supposed to be Dirigo's opponent this coming week, and then Madison, and then I think Oak Hill, and then down the line through the league. When that happened a few years ago with Booth Bay, do you recall if teams were awarded a forfeit win or they just called it nothing?
I think they called it nothing, but I would have to double check that
right.
For sure. Actually, no. I think they called it nothing because I think I remember Winthrop Monmouth had a bye that year when they played in the final. They were coming in with 7 games in the regular season rather than 8, so I think they just kind of wiped that off the schedule.
Yeah. Coach, now you guys have never dealt with a situation like this in terms of your scheduling in the Pine Tree Conference where all of a sudden a team drops, but you have had byes, I think, in your time at Lawrence.
Yes, we have, and it was a while ago that we did, but it's something that does take people to get used to. You're practicing really without a countable game at the end of the week, so it's something that you kind of have to think a little bit about what maybe you need to cover, and what you maybe can back away from. So,
did it come at a time in the season where you guys maybe felt like you could use a break and get some kids healthy?
It did, actually. The time that I last remember having a bye, and I think it was just prior to us facing Bangor. So we were able to, get ourselves a little more healthy, as you said, and get rested. And, we had Bangor that next following week. So we took advantage of, really getting to go over some things that we really wanted to cover and, get prepped for them. So.
Now, you've had some ties to the Dirigo team with your brother as a coach there. I'm sure this is something that they didn't make this decision lightly.
Right. My brother Jim has been at Dirigo for several years now, and actually they went to a meaningful game against Freeport last year. I think it was for the D League championship, I think. So he had a good group of players. Apparently, a lot of those kids were seniors, and I knew that he had some very young players this coming season. So I think his strongest number was in the freshman class. So that might have tied into the decision making of if they were kind of being left with a lot of just real young players facing their schedule. So. I'm sure that wasn't taken lightly.
Sure. And Drew, this is the second team in 2 or 3 weeks now that's done this, with Orono a few weeks ago announcing that they've suspended their varsity program. They're going to play a JV schedule. It's not clear yet if Dirigo is going to do that or not, but are we at a point where maybe the MPA should have told teams, no, you're playing 8-man and you don't get a say?
It's feeling that way, that teams that were trying to chance it with 11-man and stick with, even if they weren't sure that they weren't making that they didn't make the right choice. Because that's tough for the kids to see this season disrupted that way. I can understand the schools wanting to treat 8-man as a last resort when they've been playing 11-man all these years. But you have to keep in mind the health of the program, the health of the sport, and all that in mind. And you wonder if the NPA is going to be a little tougher on these teams in years going forward in terms of, if you're on the fence, if you could go either way, Do you think you can do 11 man? Are you sure you can do it? Let's see.
Let's
see the numbers that back you up. I mean, let's just make sure this isn't just a personal preference that you're acting. That this is something that can be healthy for your school and for your program.
Yeah, put a hubris aside and make the best decision for your athletes.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't yet seen this 8-man experiment play out in terms of how many teams go to 8-man and come back with better numbers and return to 11-man. So we don't know if this is, and we talked about this last week. We don't know if this is where teams go to stay or if this is where teams go to and then come back to 11-man. So. There's no precedent in place of like, follow these teams' leads. These ones went to 8-man and they came back. So maybe that's on the school's minds too. That it's not so much a temporary stay as a permanent one. But I mean that's just where the numbers. I mean it beats the alternative that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, it feels to me like this is going to happen again this season. We've had it with Orono, now Dirigo. I don't know what school. I know I covered Mount View on Monday afternoon when they made their game up from postponement on Saturday, and they had about 22 healthy bodies with already some important players hurt for them, and you wonder how many more can they take as far as injuries before they can't. And they've got a tough stretch with Foxcroft, Bucksport, and Monadnock back to back here.
That's the thing is that this is the ultimate game of attrition and people becoming unavailable as the season goes on. With other sports, you can kind of bank on your numbers being more or less at the end of the season what they were at the start. I mean, I know there are injuries in every sport, but football is definitely it's just part of the plan more. So you can't look at it and say, okay, we barely have enough numbers. That should hold us for all the weeks. You have to expect those numbers to take a hit.
Yeah, I mean, you get bumps and bruises every game where some kids just can't finish it.
Yeah, we're a little unfortunate with even a couple of our players this early in the season kind of being looked at to be out for several weeks already. So it's when you're faced with that, especially your young kids, your young players, you really feel bad that that's the case. And like you said, it's inevitable that it's gonna kind of play into your season. And you just hope that you don't sustain, a lot of those types of injuries that keep kids off the field for long periods of time. Right.
Well, it's something that we'll keep looking at throughout the season, and I'm sure it's something we'll talk about every week here.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, 2 teams in 2 weeks, so it's interesting to see. You got to think a lot of these changes will be happening. Teams dropping down and everything. They're going to happen earlier rather than later.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to blowouts. We were told that this is a big issue in Maine high school football in the offseason, and one of the reasons that a lot of schools, went from A to B, they can't compete, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about this ad nauseum. This week, 38 games in the state, 23 were decided by 20 or more points. Let's just make 20 points a blowout for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
That's about 61%. I know, Coach, you guys are on the winning end of one of those.
Right.
Do we in the media and the fans make a bigger deal of blowouts than football coach community? Because it seems like they happen every year, just like lately we've gotten up in arms about it.
Yeah, I know that it seems like it's happening quite frequently. I think maybe we look at, the large scores, maybe a mismatch in teams from experience to inexperience, where it might occur more early in the season, where some of those inexperienced teams, get 2 or 3 games under their belt, and then they tend to have less or fewer of those blowouts. So, maybe it's kind of, out there in front of us this particular second week after that first week of games, and hopefully as some of those teams get the experience and get their kids more into their systems, then we'll see that less frequently.
I know it's always important to kind of start the season with a win, which you guys were able to do, but at the same time, do you feel like, we had an opportunity with some tough games coming up, but we had to take our starters out because, you can't run it up too much?
Right, and I think it goes right back to, how you practice. We tend to really get a lot of quality repetitions in our practice, and I think that can help a team, if they had to rest some of their starters because of the circumstances with a weaker team the week before. So, we're very demanding on our kids to get quality reps throughout the week, and they seem to, follow suit with, that philosophy. So I don't think that we need to be uncomfortable that we only had our starters play a first half, because, they've been working pretty hard this week. Mm-hmm. So we're getting ready, and, I think they'll be ready to play a full game this coming week.
Okay. Another issue with blowouts is we think that those are the results of overmatched teams, where it's, one team is just far better than the other opponent. You can see that happen with teams that are evenly matched. I mean, I was at the Oak Hill game last week. They're keeping pace with York. It's scoreless through the first quarter. It's a 2-score game, and at halftime, Oak Hill gets some injuries. All of a sudden, that tilts the field.
Sure.
So I mean, this wasn't a case where one team didn't belong in the field with the other team. This was one or two key injuries, and it just changes everything. So, not every game that's a lopsided score is the result of two teams that didn't belong in competition with each other.
No, you're right. I saw the same situation on Saturday with Waterville and Oceanside. It was a 12-6 Oceanside game late in the third quarter. Waterville had marched down early in the third quarter and had a chance to punch one in and either tie or take the lead. Oceanside had a big defensive stand. Waterville just had a lot of young guys playing, wore out in the fourth quarter, a couple big touchdowns from Oceanside, and a close game's all of a sudden 34-6.
Right.
And that it was closer than that the whole way.
Right.
I mean, you've had some games like that over the years. I can think of one where I think you and Skowhegan were both undefeated going into it, and you catch a couple big plays, and all of a sudden it's a 30-0 game.
Right. Teams do wear down. If you're expecting a lot of kids to play both ways, it's bound to be that late in the game where kids just get worn down. So that definitely favors the opponent that doesn't have those players playing, a full game.
Right. Okay. Another issue that's come up this year in Maine is the new play clock rule. 40 seconds from the end of the play, rather than the referee spots it and you have 25 seconds. Drew, you've been working on a story about this.
Yeah, just talking to some coaches, talking to some players about where does this change manifest itself in the game the most? What are some pros and cons to it? And one of the coaches I talked to made a good point where he said it's the end of the game scenario. It's you're not when you're trying to run down the clock, it's not dependent on how quickly the official gets the bodies off the ball and respots and everything. It's 40 seconds, cut and dry. You can bank on it. Makes the handling of the game easier. And I heard another coach say he thinks this is going to bring back no huddle and quicker pace stuff. It's you'd be able to have substitutions on offense. Defense won't be able to keep up with that. So they were kind of a mix in terms of some people saying it's a small change, some people saying no, this could be something that really has an effect on how the game is played. Coach, what do you think is kind of the biggest difference in your mind between the two rules?
We do have no huddle. We do have late game no huddle play calling in our system. We're a running team, so we like to huddle each time and get our guys focused on the next play and not rush out to the line and get things going quickly. We're conscious of the 40 seconds. However, we're not really, doing much in our offense to make changes for it. So, we're conscious of it, and we're just, kind of going about our business with how we like to, have our offense be in control.
Is that something where you had to just talk to the quarterbacks before the season and say, hey, just so you guys know, it's a little different rule this time? Because I just thinking right now, I could see a situation where a quarterback is waiting for that whistle to get, and to think, okay, I got 25 seconds now. Well, now if he's waiting for that whistle, it never comes.
Right.
So is that something you had to kind of just make sure they're aware of?
We talked about it. Also at the end of the 40 seconds, they handle it a little differently, where our quarterback has to be aware of the back judge raising his arm. So that's at the 10-second warning, kind of at the end of the 40 seconds. And then at the 5 second remaining, that's when the arm will continue to go up and down. So, and we're used to seeing that. So I think that that was a subtle change. One thing that we've made our line aware of, and our center too, is as soon as if the clock continues to run and the 40 seconds is being executed, then as soon as that line judge steps back out of the way, then the center's free to get up on the ball and get things going. So we can continue to remind those guys of those things, and those are really subtle things that we will be looking for.
Yeah, and another issue where it can come into play is long gains. It used to be if your quarterback takes off and runs 75 yards down the field, there's plenty of time for everybody to get up because the officials are also trying to get the chain gangs are getting down there. So there's that little buffer of time for everybody to kind of get set. Now it's 40 seconds for everybody to get down there and get set and get ready to go. So it's just it's a little wrinkle.
Yeah.
Something to watch unfold.
Yeah. I have no idea if it will translate more to delay of games or stuff, or if that's something that's just kind of a little independent.
I don't think it will.
Yeah.
I think that the 40 seconds is more than enough time to get your play called, to get your personnel on the field, to get your quarterback either directing the offense at the line of scrimmage or play calling it in the huddle. So I think the 40 seconds is going to be plenty of time.
Yeah, I saw 3 games this weekend, and I don't recall any plays where they had to call a timeout, burn a timeout because they were running out of time or anything.
I was at the Gardner-Wyndham game, and there were 2 delay of game penalties there. But, you never know. It's week 1. This could just be as simple as we've only practiced this play a handful of times, so we are still a little bit unsure of what's going on here.
Yeah, right. All right, Coach, you guys, like we said, had a big win at Hamden on opening night. When we talked in the preseason, you knew you had some good skill kids back, but maybe some questions on the line. Did you get any answers to any of the questions that you had?
Yeah, we were really happy with a couple of things as far as how our team performed Friday night against Hamden. We were kind of, in our preseason, kind of slow to respond with our offense. And we made a point throughout the week in our preparation that we wanted to get our offense up and going and get more energy out of everyone and have faster start to our game. And we did that certainly with the very first play of the game. Our running back took it for a touchdown. And I think it was a run of over 60 yards. So we thought right then that our kids were ready to play. They got the message all week. And, we were pleased with our game overall with Hamden. Played pretty good defense, didn't let up any real big plays or sustained drives even. So we were on the upside of how we've been throughout our preseason. So we thought that was good progress.
Okay, kind of an unknown opponent for you this week, and a Falmouth Greeley team that we were talking earlier. We don't think Lawrence has ever played before.
Right, I don't think we have, and certainly we've seen him a little bit on video with exchange of film with other teams that we played with Marshwood and some of the other teams down in the southern region. And we've seen those games on tape. We really haven't seen them live, other than maybe our kids doing some of the 7-on-7 stuff in our summer program. So. This will be brand new for us to face Falmouth on the field, and we are kind of getting familiar with their athletes and what they have for their offensive system, their defensive system. So it'll be new for us, but it's going to be new for them as well.
Yeah. What do you feel like some of the keys are emerging with this game for you guys?
They're pretty explosive on offense. They've got some weapons that that cover the field on offense. So we're going to really have to limit big plays. If we give up big plays, we got to respond well to them and continue to persevere through those emotional swings. But just limiting their big plays. And then defensively, they play a style where they're more attacking. They do stunt linebackers and secondary players quite a bit. So, we got to really be ready for that type of, countering with our offense to slow that down a little bit and, be ready to protect the football and, kind of grind things out like we do. But, just making sure that we're not getting backed up with loss of yardage on that type of style of defense.
In your team, we playing on the artificial turf down at Falmouth, which is probably new for some of your kids.
Yeah. However, we did play at Hamden that had turf.
True.
That has new turf just a year ago. So this is kind of fortunate for us that we're playing back-to-back opponents with turf field. So it won't really feel that new for us this coming week.
And when you get back home to Kai's Field, it'll be like running in mud after being on those fast tracks.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, let's look at a couple other games around the region this weekend. Drew, Coney at Skowhegan. Coney looked strong offensively last week with Riley Geyer, not just throwing the ball, but running it.
Yeah, I mean, he was back to being the same dual threat that he was last year. Kind of came out of nowhere for Coney last year. We knew it was going to be this time around. I mean, this has always been a pretty tight game. I say always. The last couple of years has been a pretty tight game between Coney and Skowhegan. Don't know if that's going to be the case this time. Skowhegan got handled in that game against Brunswick, and Coney had that big win against Mount Blue. So we'll see if this is, Skowhegan always seems to get the better of Coney. It's and again in these last few years, they've been close games, but Skowhegan gave Coney their only loss last year during the regular season. So we'll see if it's a closer matchup than it currently looks like based on those two scores. It's hard to go off of just one game and accurately forecast where these teams are, but Coney had a lot of new defensive players. You were at the game against Mount Blue, and it sounds like they've got a pretty good defense, even if it's a new one.
Yeah, they really attacked the line of scrimmage well and got into the backfield for, I think, 8 tackles for a loss, 7 in the first half. Yeah. 2 on the first 2 plays that Mount Blue ran from scrimmage. So, Coach, you saw Coney in the preseason in the scrimmage. What did you come away impressed by?
We thought Coney, Coney's been doing a tremendous job in their football program for several years now. And I don't think that they're at a point where they're going to be needing to rebuild. Certainly, I think they're right there where they're going to be continuing to be very competitive, be at the top of our league. Defensively, they have a system where they're very aggressive on the line of scrimmage, and they've got people filling in gaps so that it's hard to predict when they're coming or when they're not coming. Sure. So they can make a lot of big plays because of their style. So that makes it challenging for opponents when they're able to find the personnel to be able to run that type of system, which they have. Offensively, I don't think that they're missing a beat with some of their personnel they lost from a season ago. Certainly, I think what makes that offense go is their quarterback and their line play up front. So I think they're going to be right there. It looks like they're going to be right there for a very competitive season again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another game this weekend, Drew. Gardner's going to Brewer. Gardner coming up from C to B. Last week had a tough loss against the Wyndham team, dropping from A to B. So, a year ago, these teams were 2 classes apart. And then a late touchdown for Wyndham was the only difference in that 1-point game.
Yeah, very late. Last minute, I think there were 46 seconds left. And it was just it was a really tough loss for Gardner, not just because of losing in that fashion, but that, the very first thing Coach Joe White was saying after the game was, we just made too many mistakes. They missed, they threw away some chances for some more points. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown where there were a man down the field. It was just issues where it's like, this is very easy stuff to clean up, and if we had it cleaned up today, we win this game. So this is a big bounce back week. Coaches always stress the importance of bouncing back from those difficult losses. If they win this game, they could be they'll be 1-1 and feeling good about themselves even after a tough loss. So the bounce back element is the key to watch here, I think.
Yeah, Coach, those kind of mistakes that Coach White was talking about in Gardner are probably a lot easier to deal with in week 1 than, like, say, weeks 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, certainly. You hate to give teams opportunities by your mistakes, but it tends to happen more early in the season than not. It's something that you can kind of live with a little bit, almost anticipate happening a little bit. But later, mid-season, end of season, you really want to have your game cleaned up and make sure that the opponent that's being competitive against you is earning everything that they're able to get.
Okay. And one final game to look at, Drew. Oak Hill going to Mountain Valley, coming off that tough loss to York.
Yeah, similar story as we just were talking about with Gardner, where this is a chance for them to kind of get back because they're 0-1 as well, and if they drop this game, Mountain Valley played a pretty tight 24-6 game with Cape Elizabeth, so that's a tough opponent. If they drop that game, they're 0-2 and kind of behind the 8 ball here. Their offense just had a tough go of it against York. They got shut out. Gavin Rostron is one of the better quarterbacks in that class, and he just couldn't find open guys, couldn't look comfortable. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get that offense on track in this week, or if it's going to take maybe until the end of September until it starts to look like it was looking at the end of last year.
Okay. All right, that's going to do it this week for Gridiron Gurus. For Drew, for Coach Hersom, I'm Travis Lazarczyk. Enjoy the games wherever you get out to this week, and we'll see you next week on Gridiron Gurus.